Welcome to Sparty Talk, everyone. I am Satchmo, joined by the one, the only, the thin man, DB. Greetings, DB. Or is that a Michigan State hockey puck I'm talking to?
Ooh, our special effects department came up big
Oh,
tonight, Satchmo.
big
Greetings,
budget.
Spartan.
Big budget.
We
Let's
pull out all the stops here.
nothing but the best on a March Madness special, DB.
That's right, baby. That's right. It is March. It is Michigan State basketball time.
January, February, Izzo. I-
Yeah. And as we'll talk about Michigan State hockey time, and we hope Michigan State women's basketball time, but I guess that remains to be seen while we're doing the podcast.
Yeah, we are recording while the announcements are going on, so we'll keep an eye on that. We don't know when you're going to be listening to this, but doesn't matter. We're recording while the announcements are going on.
We will try to keep you informed of the DB will be keeping his eye on the women's bracket to let you know when we get to talking about women's basketball, what's going on.
Yeah, so we'll do that. So we're not going to go through every bracket today. We might, because DB and I haven't talked about this. We might have like an emergency pod where we just go through every bracket and pick it out, like a 15-minute pod
Okay.
this week before the tournament starts. Uh,
Sure.
yeah, so that could be in the works. And you're going to want to listen because DB and I usually do pretty good in these bracket challenges. And
That's
so
right.
that's right. So listen up, stay tuned. We'll get that out before the picks are done. Before the tournament starts, I said we'll get our picks in and we'll let you know what they are. But what we are going to talk about is what we always talk about, Michigan State sports. And then whatever else we want to because it's our show.
It's not anybody else's show. It's not bought and paid for.
No, it's not Bob and Favor. This is Sparty Talk. All right.
Yeah.
This is not Sparty Talk presented by Applebee's. This is not Sparty Talk presented by Denny's. This is not
By
Sparty.
Steak and Shake. Yeah, we'll come back to that one.
Yeah, well, yeah. Stay tuned for the Denny's bit in this show.
But Steak and Shake, we're not sponsored by Steak and Shake.
no, not sponsored by any of those people. We're not even sponsored by Waffle House, which we really should. But we're Sparty Talk.
I think, although if we're going to be sponsored by Waffle House, may I move here during the meeting to also be sponsored by GasX?
Yes, I think at this point we might be sponsored by GasX before Waffle House. Uh, so like I said, we're gonna have like we'll do all the picks. I promise. Later in the week before the tournament starts, we'll get that done. We'll have a good time with it. But we are going to start with the NCAA tournament, Michigan State basketball. Start on a couple things. First of all, Michigan State number 2 seed in the East. We did not have to wait long for that announcement to come in. It
Pretty
was like, all right,
fast.
first 5 minutes of the bracket show. Boom, there's Michigan State. All right. Number 2 seed, which I'm quite happy about. It's about what they deserve. And they might, and they're playing in Cleveland, which is big. They get to play at home during the first 2 rounds. And so we expect Spartan Nation to show up strong, show up big in Cleveland, and make themselves heard as we go through this. So that we're looking forward to that. And
Yep.
so it should be fun. It's a relatively open bracket for Michigan State. And so I'll just roll through that bracket quickly. Uh, First game is against Bryant. Michigan State should be able to handle that. The winner of Marquette, New Mexico, some really good guard play, but neither team really should have the size to compete with Michigan State on the boards. And so there should be a significant rebounding advantage there. And so we've got to be happy with that. So there seems to be a path
Yep.
to Sweet 16. It seems to be a reasonable one. This is why you get the number 2 seed to get a reasonable path to the Sweet 16. And so we'll hope for the best there. But one of the reasons Michigan State is on the 2 seed and not the 1 seed, although I don't ever think the 1 seed was actually in play, but you know, one of the reasons they're in the 2 seed and not the 1 seed is because they didn't win the Big Ten tournament. Not only did they not win the Big Ten tournament, they didn't even reach the finals, which I'm kind of okay with. Extra day of rest. But that Wisconsin game, DB, Michigan State gave that game away.
Yeah, they gave that game away, and it will teach them some lessons, I
Yes.
think, going into the tournament. Yeah, the first thing is not in their control, and that is got to watch the foul trouble with the big guys. That proved to be a bit of a challenge, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Jackson Kohler's got to stay out. There are two players that need to stay out of foul trouble for Michigan State in order for them to succeed. Jackson Kohler and Jace Richardson. As long as both of those players stay out of foul trouble, Michigan State has a reasonable chance for success. So that's the first part. The second part is, come on, folks, no more technical fouls. Can we please end this?
Yeah,
That Trey Holloman technical foul was a turning point in the game, and it was just unnecessary. Uh, the
yeah, yeah. We
yeah,
need to keep it clean.
keep it clean, keep it
Yeah,
cool, and do that. The third is make your layups. For the love of God, make your layups. Don't miss your layups. Don't miss your layup. And these were not contested layups that they were missing. These were blow-bys, get to the rim and leave it short, or get into the paint and just whiff. So don't miss your layups. And finally, make your free throws. Right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the free throw thing was odd because for most of the season, Michigan State has done a pretty good job at the free throw strike.
Tell you what, the last week and a half, there have been a lot of important missed free throws. Not high volume of missed free throws, but important missed free throws. And free throws missed at the end of the game, front ends of one and ones, just stuff that's kept Michigan
Right.
State from salting games away early, from really keeping their foot on the gas, from ending droughts, whatever. It's just got to make the free throws.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. And you go back to, the Wisconsin game when they played in Breslin, which seems like it was an eternity ago, but it was like only 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago now. Um, and that there was some missed free throws and missed shots in that game that Michigan State was fortunate to get out of that. Also, rewind back to that Maryland game with the killer shot by Holloman from beyond half court to win, which we didn't talk about. And I think we could spend a couple minutes on that with our broadcast crew that we wanted to dive into there. But I think that in that game, um, and I was there in person sitting on the end where Michigan State was shooting in the second half. There were moments in that game where Michigan State got sent to the line and they weren't hitting. And maybe that game didn't need to be that close.
All right. So because you were at the game, DB,
Yeah.
what was that game like to see in person? What was the Maryland crowd like?
Well,
What was the Michigan State crowd like?
yeah. So, I mean, Michigan State, um, I wouldn't say Michigan State had a overwhelming presence there. I think because the students were in full force in College Park, and they've had a pretty good season.
Yep.
University of Maryland, to their credit, their students and their fans showed up. It was sold out, which is not always the case there for games. And it was energetic in
Yeah.
that building. And I'm not diminishing the Spartan Nation by any stretch. They were loud when they had to be, and there were moments where Maryland was throwing the game away, and Michigan State's fans were loud, but Maryland's fans were really loud. And there was a turnover, maybe even a steal, if I'm remembering. Holloman actually committed the play with like maybe 40 seconds to go. It was either a steal or a turnover. I think it was a turnover in their own end. Maryland was pressing, and the Spartans were having a difficult time getting through that press. And the crowd just went crazy. I mean, that building was shaking when that happened, and I had this dread that Maryland was going to win that game. And all around me with Michigan State and Maryland fans, I think the one thing we were all locking arms on were terrible Big Ten officiating, Satchmo. I mean, in that game in particular, I sincerely hope that the Big Ten office sits down with the officials who did that game to show them
Yeah,
the ticky tack stuff that was going both
both
ways.
ways. It
That
was
was
terrible officiating both
unnecessary.
ways. Yeah,
Yeah, in that game, that stood out in that game. But anyway, it was a tremendous crowd, tremendous game, and then what looked like Maryland might win the game on a three. You recall the clock was winding down, and I think it was Gillespie or one of their guys. He pulled up short of the 3-point line. He had
yeah.
time to go to the hole. He didn't need to do that. The game was tied 56 all and or 55 all, excuse me. And he pulled up, hit a three. The ball missed. There was still like about 1.2, maybe, if I'm thinking right. And it was Jackson Kohler,
With the
right, who
rebound.
got that
Yep. With a
rebound
great flip to
very
Holland.
smartly, immediately to Holloman. He's way beyond
Yeah.
the half court. He's not, and he launches that ball in a way like he's shooting a three. And
Hmm.
as soon as it went up, I thought, well, this is going to be close. And I was worried about the time. I was trying to watch the time there. And that ball goes in, and everyone, of course, is on their feet.
Yeah.
And suddenly, other than the Michigan State fans, you can hear a pin drop. And then I hear several people go, leave us alone, Michigan State. Tori effing Lucius, and now this. I hate you, Michigan State. And I'm just standing there like this. I have no words because I can't even believe it happened to them again.
Again, what's really
Yeah.
what's really funny is at that point you could hear the go green, go whites in the stadium. And the announcers commented on it saying, the Michigan State faithful out in force being heard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's all you heard after that. The place filed out as if someone died. I mean, it was very like, other than the Michigan State fans yelling and cheering and jubilant and everything. And, they go to the replay like right after that. The teams are kind of standing by the benches, and you see the Maryland fans, they're all sort of like,
Oh yeah.
hands on the head, like,
On
no.
on TV, you could tell it was good right away.
Yeah, yeah. And the only thing I was concerned about was there time, and I thought I saw, but when you're not watching it on TV, it's
Yeah.
hard. But I had a good look at it, and it didn't take more than 20 seconds, and they said your final score tonight: Michigan State 58, Maryland 55. Drive safely, everyone, like that. And I was like, ah,
Outstanding announcer voice, by the way. Outstanding announcer.
yes. Oh, you could hear it real well.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
there was no more cheering.
yeah, no more cheering. But going back to the game, missed free throws, missed free throws. Look, Michigan State's a good free throw shooting team. It just misses weird free throws. Like Holloman is a really good free throw shooter, but he missed a free throw on the technical. He missed another one along the way. I think Jace Richardson missed a free throw, and he's a really good free throw shooter. And when you add up all those free throws, well, there you go. It shouldn't have come down to that. And then you add the free throws combined with the missed layups, and you're sitting there going, all right, we should have this game in hand. We should have walked away with a W. And then if we
Yeah.
walked away with a W, we could have beaten Michigan for a third time this season and really just annoyed the heck out of them. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, Michigan State, we've talked about matchups before on this, and Michigan State is a hard matchup for Michigan
yeah.
this season.
Yeah, it's just a bad
Yeah.
matchup. One last thing about the Michigan
Mhm.
State Wisconsin game, actually, before we get on it, we're not trying to relive it, but we just wanted you to experience what DB did because he was at the game, and we haven't had a chance to pot about it. But the that play-by-play was replayed like everywhere the next day. That highlight was everywhere, every station, everyone was carrying it, and it was the Big Ten Network call. All right. And when things like this happen, it is almost never the TV call that's played. It's the radio call that's played because everyone wants to capture the excitement of the hometown radio station going nuts over a buzzer beater. But there's a reason why this radio
That's
call
right.
was played anywhere. It was terrible. It was one of the most god-awful pieces of garbage I've ever heard. It's Will Tiemann goes, it was. It's like Maryland for the win. He misses. Wait, here it is. Maryland for the win. He misses. Holloman tries. It's good. Holloman tries what?
Yeah,
From where?
it was bad.
It was bad. It
It
was
was, yeah,
You had no
yeah.
idea that
Satchmo,
Maryland shot a three-pointer. You had no idea the trigger was pulled early. You had no idea Kohler rebounded it. You have no idea that Holloman was shooting from three-quarter court. It was terrible, and
yeah.
I'm stuck wondering why Michigan State has such a terrible radio crew and why we've had to put up with this for 30 years.
Well, I don't want to like openly bash Will Tiemann. I don't know that much about him, but he's been broadcasting the game since we were students
Yeah.
at MSU. With Sands, maybe like a couple years when we had Mark Champion calling the games in the mid to late '90s when Izzo was still there. And as maybe people know this or not, but and you can shed light on this, Satchmo, but I think a lot of these radio broadcasts have to do with agreements with whoever owns the rights to the games, which now is called Spartan Media, which is owned by Will Tiemann.
Yes.
So that reeks of a conflict of interest to me. I think it's bad decision making to allow someone who's your broadcaster to own your
Yeah.
broadcasting. It's not going to end well. And that deal was probably made before Alan Haller. But anyway, food for thought, Alan, because we know you
Yeah,
listen and
Alan,
watch the
we know you
podcast.
listen. There are a lot of things on your plate to fix, and you got to worry about NIL, and you got to worry about the house settlement and all of this sort of stuff. God bless you.
Yeah,
You are a busy man with tough choices. Let's just
yeah.
add this one
This is in
sci-fi.
your backyard when you're thinking about it in the
Yeah,
summertime.
yes, yes.
Like just yeah, I got a firewall team.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, um, but yeah, we the Spartan broadcast. Look, I love Steginga,
Yes.
as Dick Vitale used to call him.
And you
I
and you
love
and I,
him.
you and I watched Stegenga when we were in school, right? Right. I mean, Mark
Yes,
Montgomery to Matt Stegenga was a great alley-oop combination.
yes, but Will Tiemann, you gotta have energy when you're calling a game, and I just don't feel like it's there.
Yes.
And we've seen this with other announcers on, the Tigers got rid of a guy, a solid announcer but no energy when he's calling the game. And I just think, you got to have that when you have a broadcast because you get into these situations where we win a national championship. Well, what's that gonna sound like? And we won,
And we
like
won. How about that? College sports are all about passion, right? So you have to
right,
display the passion, but you also have to describe the action on the court. And you can listen to a team in broadcast, and you might know who shoots the ball, and maybe you know who rebounds the ball, but that's about it.
right,
You've
right.
got no sense of the
And
floor of the game. Yeah.
I think that team in his courtside for the road games.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
If he's not, that's not really good. It's kind of irresponsible if not. I mean, Michigan State basketball is not like trying to save money.
It's bad.
Um,
So let's fix this.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
Let's fix that, folks.
Yeah, let's Alan Haller, get on it. And I mean, just do it. Look, we've got a
Yeah,
great school. I mean, you've got alum that can call these games if you need to.
you got two people right here. If you want to, you know,
or
Satchmo has the chops to call basketball. He could do
and
it.
so do you, DB. But more important, I mean, if you don't want me, you go hire Jason Benetti. Basketball's in his off season. Uh, that would be a great hire.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's good people around. Yeah, there's good people around, and
good people.
Bally Sports Detroit let go of some people. If any of those people have play-by-play chops, which they might,
Yeah,
go get them.
go get him.
Let's find. Yeah.
So all right,
Yep.
let's do that. But back to Michigan State and its tournament outlook. you're right. Mistakes to clean up, free throw shooting, technical fouls, don't get in foul trouble, make your layups. I think if they do those four things, they're in reasonably good shape. It would be nice if Jaden Akins got hot and really found his shooting rhythm. And it would be nice if frankly Frankie Fiddler heated up a little bit. Uh,
Yeah,
and, and and
yeah.
and did that. So I think those would be the two sort of nice to haves, not required, but if one of those two nice to haves happens along with the make layups, make free throws, don't get technical fouls, and Kohler and Aiken stay out of foul trouble. If any of the nice to haves happen on top of those must haves, then Michigan State has a reasonable shot of reaching the Elite Eight. And possibly the Final Four, depending on who they play. I think beating Auburn is a tough task. Beating anyone else in that region is reasonable.
Agreed. Yeah. Here's the thing on the Spartan stat line that stands out to me this year more than anything else. The turnover ratio is lower than
Yes.
it has been. And I think that's a huge thing for this team.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Jeremy Fears
Mhm.
is coming around at the right time. And he's playing really good two-way ball. And so we've got him on track. Jace Richardson is peaking and playing incredible ball. And so that's going well. And yeah, I mean, the Michigan State's depth is real. Uh, and so that's good. I do have sort of one message for Spartan fans, which is lay off Xavier Booker. Let's give this kid a break. He is struggling, uh, but he's showed up for Michigan State in big moments too. He's hit a couple critical threes in this season. He's had a couple critical block shots, a couple of big rebounds. He is not what fans hoped for or wanted when he signed on the dotted line and decided to come to Michigan State. His confidence is clearly shook. And you can see that out in the court right now. That said, he can still provide Michigan State key moments. A key three here, a key block here, a key rebound here. And if he can shake off, whatever lull that he's in right now, and do it without turning the ball over, Michigan State, there's going to be a possession or two possessions somewhere in this tournament where they're going to need Xavier Booker to do something good, whether it's a screen, whether it's a rebound, whether it's a block shot, whether it's something. So lay off the kid. He's struggling. He knows he's struggling, and he's not happy with that. He doesn't need the rest of you piling up.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, when I think back to that Maryland game we were talking about, Booker hit a three in that game
Yeah,
that was huge. And, we've seen this before where, a guy like Booker maybe is like, struggling a little bit. And then all of a sudden, and, not to put added pressure on him
yeah,
or to make any predictions, but, he could suddenly break out,
yeah,
in the tournament as the more the Spartans play. Um, yeah, I think just, the Spartans have a pretty solid team. So, I think that they can get by. There's certain players that if they're struggling, the other ones can pick them up.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
And I'm not saying Booker needs to get a ton of run if he's struggling. You put him out there if he's struggling, get him out, and see. But he does possess some tools that can come in handy, and so it's not the just let them try and work through the struggles. You don't have to be jerks about it. And
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this vitriol that we have towards players sometime, it's unbecoming. I mean, I'll digress for a second. The kid from Kansas, Trey, um, he was attacked by the Kansas fans online with racist stuff.
oh, yeah, it's
I mean,
terrible.
what is that? I mean,
Yeah, it's terrible. What are we doing here?
yeah. And worse, Bill Self never even denounced that stuff, which is
Yeah,
also kind of like,
yeah, it's just
you
awful.
know,
Yeah.
there should be no place for that period.
Yeah.
Like,
And,
yeah.
and, and the idea that these kids are paid now so you can say whatever you want, not buying it. All right.
No,
It criticism
no.
is criticism is okay, but this is beyond criticism. This is venturing, criticize the play on the court, right? You can be critical of the play on the court, but once you start like telling someone to go into the transfer portal and get out of here and what are you doing at Michigan State and that sort of stuff, that's over the pale.
Yeah, it also starts to lead to a bad reputation for MSU sports, and
Yeah.
like Izzo says, criticize him. I mean, if you want to, say whatever, hey Izzo, why? What are you doing? Like, or the coaching staff. That's
And,
fair.
and the
Right,
bottom line is these are still young people. I don't care if they're getting paid. They're 18, 19, 20 years old. They're still trying to figure out life. They're trying to figure out life. They're trying
right.
to figure out the game. They're trying to go to school. They're trying to do a lot of different things here. And I think a little bit of grace goes a long way.
Exactly. Yeah, and we're having a good season. We won the Big Ten regular season championship. It's not like we're missing the tournament here. Come on, folks.
Yeah.
I mean, Michigan State basketball fans, let's not turn into whiny, people like,
Yeah. Like those.
the school down the road there,
Yeah, exactly.
you know.
All right. So yeah, so we're feeling pretty good about this team. We're feeling, disappointed about the Big Ten tournament, but got an extra day rest, and so I think it sort of works out. And we go from there. Uh, all right. Any other Michigan State basketball thoughts before we go to hockey?
No, other than, just what you said, and I guess the will we be saving our predictions about how far the Spartan goes for our
Yeah,
shorter
I mean,
pod?
yeah, let's save it for the brackets pod.
All
Uh,
right. So we'll do a little research this week and then come up on maybe Tuesday night, perhaps.
yeah, Tuesday night or something like that. Yeah, we'll do a brackets pod
Okay.
and do that. So yeah, all right. So let's do that. Michigan State hockey. They beat. They won their semifinal matchup
Notre
against
Dame.
Notre Dame. Uh,
Yeah.
Sort of a surprise that Notre Dame made it there because I think what Notre Dame had to beat Minnesota to get there, and Minnesota is really good. But Notre Dame got hot at the right time, and it was a 1-0 game. So and so I mean Michigan State beat one of the hottest teams in the country to advance. And so first of all, good for Michigan State hockey. They controlled that game, peppered Notre Dame with a ton of shots. Trey Augustine was stellar in net, and it was a good win. It was a win. It was the type of win that Michigan State wouldn't have had a year ago or 2 years ago. But now they are, and it shows why DB that they're going to be a number one seed in the NCAA tournament, most likely.
Yeah. I think regardless of what happens against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship, they're going to be, obviously we'd like to win that. It's at Munn, Ohio State is a formidable team. They're probably going to be in the tournament. They have some scorers on that team. Um, a couple things about Michigan State hockey. So, first of all, I mean, defensively and penalty kill wise, I mean, the Spartans are one of the best teams in college hockey and in the Big Ten. You have Trey Augustine back there. They did put up about 45 to 48 shots on goal on Notre Dame and only got one. And so when you kind of look at MSU, they're not exactly like I mean, they've scored in some bunches in a few games this year against, oddly enough, like Minnesota. I think they put up a 9 spot back in January. So they can play that kind of a game, but that's not really their game. And so, but there's a slight concern with me that when you get into the tournament like that, you've got to really be able to score goals. I'm not diminishing defense and penalty kill. It's important, but 1-0 and 2-1 games aren't gonna
Yeah, it's
against when you go deeper, when you're playing your Boston colleges and some of those, that's a little concerning to me. I don't know what you think.
and I agree. I think offense and even strength goals, more importantly, are an absolute concern. And so I think Michigan State has to find some answers there. These remind me a little bit of the Ryan Miller teams at Michigan State. The Ron Mason and Ryan Miller, sort of the end of the Mason era, or the end of the really competitive part of the Mason era. But yeah, the where it was defense and special teams and sort of timely, even strength goals. This reminds me of that, and we know that formula works. But you need a lot of breaks for it to go all the way. And
Yeah, I mean, this team has four really good lines, and they can score. But it's just a slight concern. If they run into somebody,
yeah,
in the NCAA tournament,
I,
um, yeah,
I'll tell you where it comes in is that a lot of the high end a lot of the top seeds remaining in the tournament, or a lot of the teams they might end up playing, their top line is great, but there's like a fall off between that first and second line, and there's an even bigger fall off between that second and third, and there's an even bigger fall off between that third and fourth. And so with Michigan State rolling out four lines, you have to like them almost like Michigan State basketball, the strength in numbers. You have to like them in their ability to A, wear people down, but B, also be ready in those quick turnaround games to be able to go into the next game. And you almost like them on the second game more than you do on the first game because you're like, all right, you're going to be fresh and ready to go. And whereas a lot of other teams are going to be piling up minutes on their top lines or their top two lines.
yeah, that's an interesting thing that you say too, because um, in the Big Ten tournament here, and we'll get back to the schedule in a second, but the Big Ten tournament, you get into the semifinals and then the final, and it's just one game. In the NCAA tournament, you have that, you basically have four games, if you can make it all the way.
Yeah,
And you play one on Friday, one on Saturday, or however they do it, Thursday, Saturday, something, and a day off in between. So the sort of odd trend that I noticed this year in the second half of the season, well, actually going back into the first half of the season, was MSU losing Friday night games or not playing as well or tying and doing better on Saturday. So the one thing that I'd be keeping in mind if I was Adam Nightingale is we got to go, on that first game because
yes,
if we let up or yeah,
you got to go
yeah,
on that
you
first
can't
game.
just lollygag.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got to go on
Yeah,
that
you got
first.
it.
You got.
Season's on the line. That's it.
Yeah, I think it helps that they're going to be playing teams that don't know. And so that's going to help a great deal. But yeah, you can't lose the first game, win the second game, and say, hey, we made it through the weekend. That's not going to work.
It's not going to happen anymore. This is it. And, that's important. That game against Notre Dame last night, some Spartan fans might have said, well, that's a little close, only one goal. But, you need some preparation in games like that where you're going to run up against a team that plays good defense like Notre Dame does.
Yeah, and Notre Dame's been on fire, so let us not minimize the win. Minnesota certainly won't minimize Michigan State winning over Notre Dame, and we shouldn't either. Looking forward to the Ohio State game. One other note on the hockey tournament: a week between the semifinals and finals. What kind of ridiculousness is that? Let's play the tournament and finish the tournament. This we don't need a week.
Mm. Yeah, I'm noticing that uh, it's an interesting thought. These conferences play like when the Big Ten is starting their playoff. There's a couple of them still finishing their regular season, and it feels to me like let's all do the same thing. Let's all go together. If everybody's gonna have a week off, then everybody should have a week off. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand why, because this is March, like this is hockey time. The only week off there should be is between the regional finals and the Frozen Four.
Yes, 100%. That should be the only week off. The whole thing's just
Yeah.
ridiculous. It's just like if the whole point
Yeah,
of
it's really strange.
I mean, the point of the Big Ten tournament should be to prepare you to play in the NCAA tournament. And if you're going to be prepared to play in the NCAA tournament, then it should be like, all right, play every other day.
Right, right.
So,
And it was interesting too because you saw, well, first of all, I just want to back up one square on hockey. Penn State was on fire at the end of the regular season. They knocked Michigan out in a best of three.
how bad?
Actually, I think they swept them. Yeah,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken, I think so. Penn State gave Michigan State
Oh,
and Minnesota. To Minnesota, they gave them fits at the
yeah.
end of the year. I mean, Penn State has an excellent goalie, and I'm glad not to see Penn State in the Big
Yeah.
Ten championship because I just when I saw the Penn State and Ohio State game afterwards, I was like, oh, Penn State, that could be trouble. Ohio
Penn
State's
State was on
good, but I
fire.
feel like that's
They
a
were probably the hottest team in the conference towards the end of the season.
yeah, that type of team is extremely dangerous, and there's a strong chance they could get in the NCAA tournament, and hopefully they're not. Hopefully the Spartans don't have to see them, but if they do, the Spartans should be ready this time around because on senior weekend in February it was tough against Penn State at home.
Yeah, it was. Uh,
The other thing too is Minnesota. They're right up there with Michigan State in the conference. They shared the regular season title, and they are highly ranked right in the same area as MSU. And to see them crash out of the tournament, the Big Ten tournament, what do you think is going on there? I mean, do you think that they just didn't bring
I
the
just
whole
think Notre
effort?
Dame got hot. It's that thing that happens in hockey, right? The best teams don't always win. And we've seen that in the Stanley Cup playoffs as well. Like you get a hot goalie, you get a defense rolling, you get some timely goals. You can win a few series you aren't expected to. And I think that's what happened with Notre Dame. I think it's more a reflection on how well Notre Dame was playing and less a reflection on Minnesota.
So we have breaking news.
Ooh.
Do you want to do we need our sound effects back from Blog Talk Radio.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
Rest in peace, Blog Talk
Rest
Radio.
in peace, Blog Talk Radio. Howard Stern misses you too.
Howard Stern's phony phone call people are devastated. And I'm sure that they
Oh
tried to
yeah.
call us at one point and we didn't answer the phone. But
Yes.
but yeah, they would play Blog Talk Radio all day in their office waiting for someone to open the phones.
I wonder how many of our listens came from Howard Stern. Like, how much hockey does Michigan State sports, or how much does Michigan State sports does Howard Stern's people know about? Thanks to us being on Blog Talk Radio.
Well, kudos to you, Satchmo, for not really opening the phone lines at all, because I think that's where the problems start, right? When you
Yeah,
do that.
we did it
And
every now and then, but yes.
anyway, so the Michigan State women's basketball team is in the
Woo.
NCAA tournament, and you might be surprised. I am a little. The Spartans are a 7 seed
A seven
in
seed.
the yeah, they're in the Raleigh region, which is not easy. They're going to play Harvard on Saturday, and then they'll play the winner of NC State, which is a home game for them, or Vermont if they make it to
It, it,
the second round.
it seems appropriate, Harvard versus the Harvard of the Midwest. And so that's a good matchup.
I mean, it'll be a tough game.
It'll be a tough game. And
Are
Michigan,
you surprised?
be
Are you
quiet. If
surprised?
you want to just hold on a second. Michigan fans, if you want to claim the whole Harvard of the Midwest title thing, there, try beating Michigan State. There you go.
Shot fired. I love it. So Are you surprised that the Spartans women's
Yeah.
team are a 7?
7. I had the Spartans pegged anywhere from a 9 to a 12. Uh, I thought
That's what
12
I
was
thought.
unlikely. I thought 11 was unlikely, but I thought a 9 or 10 seemed reasonable. But a 7, I'll take it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that may speak to the strength of their conference. I'm not sure exactly what the thinking there is. I mean, I love it. I'm glad
Yeah.
for them. I was actually nervous they might not make it after that
I'll
loss
flame
to
out
Iowa on
against
the Big
Iowa.
Ten women's
Yeah.
team.
Yeah. Yeah. That loss against Iowa in the Big Ten tournament was just devastating. I mean, could you imagine
Yeah.
if they won
What
that game, what their seed would have been?
Well, now looking at it, right. I mean, you're talking about a 6, maybe a
Yeah.
5. I mean, if they make it all the way to the Big Ten championship game, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. It's I'll tell you what, I think playing UCLA and USC relatively tough, I think they got a lot of credit for that. Because USC and UCLA are two of the five best teams in the country, right? I mean, right up there with South Carolina, UConn.
UConn.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
NC State.
NC
Yeah,
State.
they are damn good. Yeah, you're right about that, Satchmo. I mean, we talked about what those West Coast team, what sport the West Coast teams were going to make a difference in. And, the first thought was maybe football or men's basketball, but no, it's women's basketball, like USC and UCLA. And we probably should have seen that coming because both of them have excellent women's basketball program.
Yeah. I mean, and both teams were fantastic this year. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
USC beat UCLA twice in the regular season. Juju Smith is just holy cow, is she awesome.
Oh, yeah. And
And
yeah.
yeah, and UCLA has just been great all year. They just couldn't beat USC. And then in the Big Ten tournament, rightly came down to USC versus UCLA in the championship game. That's what it should have been. And UCLA wins the Big Ten tournament and earned it. And so those two teams, I mean, and not only were they the best in the Big Ten, it was head and shoulders above everyone else. And the fact that Michigan State could just even hang in there against those two schools sort of speaks positively to the direction the Michigan State program is going in. And it also gives Michigan State a target that says, all right, this is what we've got to get to. How do we do that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there was some times this season where there was a few disappointments. That game that they lost to Michigan
Yeah.
in Breslin, I really felt like they could win that game, and they just kind of like slumped in the second half with their shooting, and Michigan took advantage of that. That was a disappointment to me. As much as it was, just and then the Iowa game in the Big Ten tournament was disappointing. And there was too many games this year where, I mean, I felt like the Spartans were playing catch up too much. I also went to the Maryland women's game versus MSU in College Park here back around the holidays, and MSU played ferocious defense, but their shooting sometimes got them in trouble, and they'd go down 10, 11 and claw back, and they make it a game, but then you can't live that way.
Can't live that way.
No.
Yeah, can't live that way. Yeah, I have a feeling, although I don't know for sure, I have a feeling that this break that Michigan State's had is actually going to help them quite a bit. It's going to allow them to rest. It's going to allow them to heal up a little bit. They play an high energy form of basketball that can not only wear down opponents, but it can wear a team down over a season. And seeing what Michigan State does in the NCAA tournament with fresh legs, and the ability to really get after it, is actually, I think, going to be very interesting.
Yeah, 100% right. I think in this particular case, and again, talk about weeks off, it is a little bit of an odd thing, again, with the entire NCAA women's basketball, except for like some of the smaller conferences who are finishing up their championships, but most of the big conferences were off this past week. So there's a lot of teams resting, and that rest will be good for MSU. They just get in your face playing defense, and that will help them. That's going to be the kind of thing where when you play an NC State, odds are NC State has probably not seen that level of defense this year. I'm not trying to demean the ACC women's conference, but I don't think that they've seen that
No. I
type
don't
of
think they've
defense
seen it.
this year. It's
I don't think they've seen it either. And you bring up an interesting point that I just want to expound on a little bit, which is the reason why the Michigan State, not Michigan State, but the reason why all of these big time conference women's basketball tournaments are scheduled earlier is the original thinking was, hey, let's not get in the way of the men's tournament. We need to schedule earlier to get eyeballs and attention and media coverage and all of that sort of stuff. And they might have been right in the past. But we're now at a point where the women's game is actually more exciting and more interesting than the men's game. And part of the reason is we just know the women's players better because you got so many one and dones, whereas in the women's game, you have players staying for 3, 4 years. You get to know them, you become invested in them, you want to watch them. And then because they stay 3 to 4 years, there's a quality to that game and a quality of growth to that game that you just see. And it's different. I'm not saying the men's and women's games are different, but because we know the players and we're invested in the players in ways that we just aren't in men's hoops anymore because of one and dones and transfers and all of this sort of stuff. The women's game has reached a popularity and attention standpoint where you want to know what? Let's get them like the Big Ten's men and women's basketball that tournament should be happening simultaneously. It should be going on at the same time.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it could work logistically. Imagine the buzz with all those teams there like that. Where you have and look, there's some dead space where you could have like if you could start the women's tournament, like maybe a day ahead,
Yeah.
get some of their games in, and then the women's championship could be on Saturday night
Hmm.
still, in prime time. I mean, you're at one venue, all that stuff's going on, all those fans there. I mean, that would be amazing.
I mean, could you imagine a Big Ten tournament triple header on Saturday where you have semifinal one for the men's, women's championship, and then semifinal two?
That would be amazing.
That would be
Yes.
insanely good.
Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about just like a lot of hype and, Big Ten be the first one to do it. Like
Yeah,
the other conferences will start doing it. Yeah. I mean, guaranteed. And I think they could do it too. I mean, it just creates this whole level of excitement. It can all be watched simultaneously. ESPN is covering the women, CBS or whomever is covering the men. I
yeah.
mean, do it, do it.
I
Yep,
I think that's the direction we need to move in. Look at us,
yep.
DB. You're just solving problems left and right. Come on,
We got all the answers
you
here on
got all the
Sparty Talk.
answers. Yeah,
We should be paid for these ideas.
I mean, consultants get paid big bucks for these types of answers. We're just giving them away for free on Sparty Talk.
Yeah,
All right. I think it's a good place to wrap up the women's hoops talk. So
think so too.
we've talked men's hoops, women's hoops. We've talked hockey. So I think that's a good place to wrap up our Michigan State talk here. Oh, one more.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh
one.
no, no, no more on the Spartans. You
Yeah,
you have a couple
no
more
more on as
agenda
far as
items.
there is one other college sports note that we want to talk about before we shift to the pros. And that's John Feinstein Jr. Uh, passed away a few days ago. And John Feinstein is one of the great sports writers of all time. I mean, he is a wordsmith, and I do not say that word lightly. DB and I are both professional media people. We were both in the newspaper business. We were both in online journalism as well. We come from that background. And when we tell you that John Feinstein Jr. was a wordsmith, that means he is among the absolute best who have ever put pen to paper. And his columns were incredible. In fact, his last published column, DB, was in the Washington Post, and it was about Tom Izzo. It was published the morning that he passed away.
Mm,
That's the last printed word that we'll see from John Feinstein Jr. And he could write with the best of them. The man loved college basketball. Season on the Brink. If you haven't read it,
mm,
it is one of the best books of all time, right? Look, we're, DB and I are not Indiana fans. We don't really care about Indiana. We didn't like Bobby Knight. We're happy to see Indiana lose on a regular basis. Um, but there's no denying the brilliance of that book. And part of the brilliance was that book is that he was embedded with Indiana. He had amazing access. I mean, he got to see everything and write about whatever he wanted. And his portrayal of Bobby Knight as a flawed genius was just amazing. He captured Bobby Knight and the good, the bad, and the ugly in raw form and brilliant prose. And it was the first of that kind of writing that we've ever seen. And I mean, it is just unbelievable.
yeah, Season on the Brink. His books about Army and Navy football rivalry, amazing. I
A
read
Good
one too
Golf
about
Story about golf was excellent.
yeah, and then there was one about Tiger Woods caddy that laid a lot of insight into
Yeah.
Tiger Woods, and I don't remember what that was called, but it was excellent. And there was also one where he writes about the Patriot League basketball, and spent a lot of time with those teams and your American University and Lehigh and some of those. And I loved it. I mean, the guy was like I'm sure there's going to be some kind of special commemoration for him during
I
the
hope
NCAA
so.
basketball tournament.
I
Yeah,
hope.
because he was, I mean, when you think about college basketball tournament, he was the guy, and he didn't let the NCAA off lightly. I mean, he expressed his opinions, and the thing that's so interesting about him that we'll probably never see again is how he was able to embed himself with teams like the Baltimore Ravens book that he wrote was just incredibly interesting. Embed himself with teams and get their respect by getting to know them, and it was a two-way sort of
Yeah.
thing. I think it was there
And
was a coach or someone who no, it was Tony Kornheiser who said after one of the news conferences one time that he was with Junior, as he called him, said he was asking tough questions to one of the coaches, and the coach said, "Who are you again?" And he told him his name, and Tony Kornheiser was like, "You won't forget his name.
it,
You won't forget his name."
you won't forget his name. It is the truth. What was remarkable, though, is that usually Access captures writers, Access, slants writers and gets them to pull their punches a little bit. Feinstein never pulled his punches. Uh, he had opinions. He let those opinions be known. He had a very sharp wit and could have a sharp tongue. Uh, but you're right. He was respected because he could back up everything that he was saying and he could back up everything that he talked about. And you might not have liked it, but people would admit it was fair. One of the more interesting things about Season on the Brink is Bobby Knight hated the book
Right.
and refused, had a feud with Feinstein for a while. But what the feud was over was just so silly. Bobby Knight didn't quibble with like the meat of the book or anything like that. Bobby Knight hated the fact that John Feinstein revealed that he swears a lot and included all that profanity in the book. Like of all the things to get upset about in that book, it was the swearing. uh, just unbelievable.
Yeah. The other good book too is the Red Auerbach book, because Red Auerbach has roots
Yeah,
in DC. He might even be from he might have been from DC, but I read that one too. And all it was John Feinstein sitting around with Red Auerbach and these other like gosh, I wish I could remember like these
at these
patriarchs of
lunches.
Washington DC basketball. What?
Yeah, at these lunches. He used to host these lunches.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And yeah, he got Knight to be quoted in that book about Red Auerbach and the stories and the stuff. And, it's just, oh, yeah, they will never have that again.
no.
No, unfortunately, it's very sad.
Yeah, it's very sad.
Yeah.
The man was brilliant, an absolute genius. He loved college basketball. He loved Duke basketball. We'll forgive him for that. He loved
Another team we don't root for.
another team we don't root for. He loved ACC basketball. We'll forgive him for that. But I mean, no, I mean the man was simply one of the best that's ever been in the profession, and he's going to be missed. Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All
Yeah.
right. Well, there's no
Yeah.
good way to pivot out of that. We should probably end the podcast. We should probably end the podcast there. No, we're
Well,
not going to do that.
we could. Well, I know that was my idea, so I'm bad. Well, we could try to end on a funny note or a high note, or
No,
is there
well,
some,
let's
or do
do
you just think it's too much now?
yeah, let's do the Red Wings, and then we'll talk about Denny's, and we'll call it a pod. Uh,
Okay.
yeah. So the Red Wings wanted a shutout this weekend. Which is stunning. They're a few points out of a playoff race, out of the playoffs. But TB, they're still terrible. They can't score at even strength. They're counting on power play goals to
No.
carry them. Uh,
Yeah.
they traded for a goalie that they used to have for reasons that are unknown to me.
15 years ago.
Yeah,
15 years ago.
it's here, and I mean, what are the Red Wings doing? There's no shot. There seems to be no plan. I don't know what the Iser plan is outside of let's try and barely make the playoffs for the next 5 years.
Yeah, we're diehard Wings fans, and this is a lot. And I told you, offline, Satchmo, that I was at the Caps when the Caps beat the Wings, a couple weeks ago in DC. And I mean, the Wings started off, I mean, they were flying in the first period, but part of me was like, okay, this team's going to lose its legs because they're not going to be able to keep up with Washington. And they played the night before, and they did. They were just falling all over themselves, and the turnovers and the mistakes and I think it's a little surprising they beat Vegas today because that's a good team, but when they play Carolina and the Caps and some of these, it's very obvious. I mean, they're just going to get squashed if they
Yeah.
play one of those teams in the first round.
Yeah, the talent disparity between the top of the NHL and the Detroit Red Wings feels like the Grand Canyon. And
Mm,
that's the problem, right? There doesn't seem to be anything the Red Wings, there's no look, the Red Wings have a lot of great prospects. There isn't a single prospect out there that's going to help close this gap. There are prospects out there that'll make the Red Wings better, but there's not enough out there that's going to help close the gap. The gap is
no,
just so big. It feels
right.
like the Red Wings are on a hamster wheel on the playoff borderline, and that's where they're going to be stuck for the next 5 years.
Yeah, it's even when you watch the young players, we talked about Lucas Raymond before, and he's got a great load of potential, and but then there's Arvidsson and Cider and some of these folks that I think they can be good, but they're learning on the job, and yeah, it just
Well, I'd
I
rather
don't
have them
think
learn
there's
on
any.
learn on the job in the NHL instead of learn at Grand Rapids. Good grief. But,
Well, right. I mentioned this guy, number 50. Oh shoot, Snipe or whatever his name was.
yep.
Fourth game in the NHL, and what I saw in the Caps game was that guy. was providing energy. He was providing a spark. He was going to the net. This guy's not a goal scorer. He drops the gloves, and it's
Yeah,
like, where has that guy been? Like, I'm sure Todd McClellan, who I just want to give credit to, the last time we did a podcast, I think Derek Lalonde was just fired.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so Todd McClellan, it shows a little bit like, this he's a good coach. So like he's been able to squeeze whatever the juice is in here, but it's only going to be so much juice. There's not a lot there.
There's a limit to the juice. It is
Yeah.
it is an unripened orange that has no plans on ripening.
It's not fresh squeezed, it's Tang.
Tang, there you go. He's dealing with concentrate. Uh,
I mean, and if the Wings make the playoffs, okay. Then what? This team's not going to go to the Stanley Cup final. If it does, I mean, wow, that would be just an unbelievable thing, but I cannot see that happening. I
no,
mean, no. I mean, there's too many roadblocks in the way of that happening. And this is not a team where you're like, okay, well, next year, not this team.
yeah,
No, and a sad reality is going to hit at some point that I've seen. I think even the Free Press, Detroit Free Press wrote that is, it may be time to start looking at, your one valuable commodity in Dylan Larkin and getting a whole like load of draft picks back for that because
that's it. I mean, Dylan
yeah,
Larkin will make a fine second or third line center on a playoff contender.
yes,
He
yeah, he's a hometown kid. He's from Detroit area. I mean, there's no sense in hanging on if you're just gonna be stuck in
will.
neutral. Give him a chance to go win a cup. It's
But
unfortunate, but
but but Dylan Larkin cannot be the top line center of a Stanley Cup champion. Can't do it.
no, he's not that kind of a player. He's a good player, but he's not
He,
that guy.
he's a very good two-way player.
Yeah.
He is not, we better stop Dylan Larkin from beating us sort of player.
Right. Right. That's the thing, right? You just hit on something. The Red Wings aren't going to scare the current iteration of the Red Wings are not going to scare anybody.
No.
You see some of these teams like the Capitals, those young players that they have
Mhm.
drafting lower than the Red Wings. I don't know how they did that. Maybe scouts. I don't know. And then you have like, your other top teams like Florida and you look around at some of the Western teams that are really good, like Winnipeg. Well, they got players on those teams that you're like, we got to pay attention to some of these. And that's just not the case with the Red Wings.
I agree.
Yeah.
Uh, all right. Final thing that we want to touch on. Some of you might know this, some of you don't. Well, probably nobody knows it because we haven't really talked about it on the pod. But Satchmo's training for a 10-mile race, uh, which, is not easy on these old joints. And but training for a 10-mile race, training's going well. Race is, beginning of April. And
Good.
so we'll see how it goes. But part of training for a 10-mile race is cramming as much protein into that body as you can. And which is why I found myself at a Denny's recently. And let's face it, Denny's is not a place you go to be happy, right? Uh, all right. No one
Happy.
no one says, "Yay, let's go to Denny's." That just doesn't exist. You go to Denny's because you're like, you want to know what? I'm feeling like breakfast. Let's go to Denny's, right? Because I can get breakfast for 24 hours. But you're not screaming for excitement. You're just saying they have breakfast 24 hours. That's what I want. Let's go to Denny's. Because you know exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get reasonably bad service, or reasonably not bad, but reasonably slow service, uh, and a pretty basic menu. Uh,
Right.
and so that's what Denny's is. The particular Denny's I went to, DB, had a sign in the window that said, "Hold on, look, I need to read this." So I'm going to the phone because I need to read the sign exactly because the sign is remarkable. It says Denny's meeting room available where business meets bacon and pancakes and burgers and milkshakes. What?
Oh my goodness.
What is it? Well, first of all, what
Oh,
Denny's in their right mind is going to say, you want to, let's just allocate like uh, 500 square feet or 1,000 square feet to a meeting space. What? Why on earth would you do?
who's thinking of that?
Who is thinking? And honestly, who on earth is thinking? You want to know what? The next time we do an off-site meeting, let's go to Denny's. There's no one. There's no one. When you go to
Oh
a meeting, you
man.
want to go to a place that makes people happy. Denny's is not a place that makes people happy.
No, no. Denny's is a place where quite often you kind of be racist.
I mean, I guess it could, yeah.
It doesn't
Denny's
have a
does
good
not,
history.
it doesn't have a good history.
No.
No, it doesn't have a good history when it comes to
Oh,
racism. You don't go to Denny's to be happy. You go to Denny's because it's there.
right, right.
You definitely don't go there for a meeting. I mean, if you're going to go to a meeting, pick a place that is going to that's people are going to be excited about. Pick a place that has like I mean, no one's good idea of a meeting is, huh, let me get some Denny's bacon. No.
That would be funny if like the Waffle House executives went into Denny's and had their meeting there.
Oh, that would be hilarious.
Here's how we're gonna beat this place, guys. We'll just let them hear it.
Oh man. Who on earth is going to hold a meeting at Denny's?
Well, I mean, I could tell you it's definitely not going to be a DEI committee.
Oh, that is true. I'll tell you what, though. Speaking of meetings at breakfast place, there's an
Yeah.
I in Baltimore in the Inner
Hmm.
Harbor that features plug outlets in its booths and tables.
Oh, that's a novel idea.
Novel idea. They are inviting business people to eat there, hang out there, do their work there. Uh, and I'll tell you what, it's working. You are
Oh,
seeing a different sort of clientele at that IHOP. Now,
interesting.
now maybe that's something Denny's could try. I didn't see any meeting space at the IHOP.
I, I'm so curious. Where would this meeting? Did you see it when you were at this Denny's? Like, was
I
there like a
saw
special room? Or...
I did not go looking for it because I thought going looking for it would call unwanted attention to me, which you frankly don't want to have in a Denny's.
Yeah, you don't really want extra attention when you're at Denny's. Just give me the grand slam and let me get out of there.
Yeah.
Was the food good? And what did you order?
Oh, a veggie omelet, some coffee, stuff that you can't hash brown, stuff that you can't screw up. It was reasonably good. Uh,
Okay, all
it,
right,
it was reasonably good. Service was predictably slow, but not so slow that you wanted to kill yourself. And well, that's what I meant by reasonably slow. And so it sort of worked out, and I got the requisite protein and the requisite carbs. I got a biscuit and between the
good,
biscuit and the hash brown. So, the body's properly fueled and all that sort of stuff. And it was inexpensive, which I appreciate. Denny's price point is outstanding. So kudos to Denny's on maintaining a good price point. Uh, but come on, people. A
even
combo food?
even with the egg situation, your meal wasn't too over the top.
No, no, it was
Well,
fine.
that's good.
Yeah, it was
That's
fun.
good.
Yeah.
You know, there's always there's always something on our podcast. We're a little bit like Mad Men. There's always some foreshadowing. So if you went back and rewound this podcast, you would hear Satchmo mention Waffle House early
Yeah.
on. So there was some
There-
reason why
uh,
sometimes you see things or hear things on the podcast. So pay attention.
yes, and I'm a huge Waffle House fan. Like if you gave me a choice
I
between a
know.
Waffle House and a Denny's, I'd take the Waffle House every time.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Waffle Houses are outstanding, and they are not reasonably slow. They're reasonably fast, except when you're waiting in line, then they're really slow because that line does not move to get in.
Yeah, we've experienced a few of those where we weren't sure when we would be eating.
Yeah, yeah, because but once you sit down and order, the food shows up quickly.
Yes.
Unless unless the short order cook gets into a fight with their significant other, in which case you have no idea what's going to happen. Just none whatsoever.
That is a very inside baseball personal story, but yes, I recall. Yes, I
Yes.
I do. Yes, it was 4 a.m. too, I
Yeah,
believe.
it was 4 a.m. Yeah, we witnessed some dicey stuff at the Waffle House. But
We stayed around, we stayed around and waited, which is like people always ask me when I tell them that story. You stayed, and we're like, yeah, we wanted to see what was going on. Like
plus we were
it
hungry.
became very curious, and we were hungry.
Yeah, we were
Yes,
hungry. I mean, we
yes.
hadn't even gotten our coffee yet at that point. Uh,
No.
so, well, there you have it. I think at this point, Waffle House is more likely to sponsor us than Denny's.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think we're gonna be here. I don't think we're gonna be hearing from Denny's, and maybe that's okay.
That's okay. Or at least we won't be hearing from a Denny's with a conference room. Uh,
So we could have the Sparty Talk annual convention sometime.
yeah, probably at the Waffle House.
Table for two.
Table for two.
Oh, that is perfect. Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching Sparty Talk. We appreciate your patience and, in the words of the late, great Greg Gumbel, what was it? Good night and so long.
Good night and so long. That's a great way to end us out.